Hi, Tuesday, June 21st, 2016. Maneko 64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. We're 2 days away from the referendum here in the UK. And things are heating up. It looks like the polls are very tight. You know, it's not really certain whether it's going to be a remain or a leave vote. Very close, like 50-50, I would say. And there's a lot of people who are still uncertain or sitting on the fence. Today, Prime Minister David Cameron made a speech in front of Downing Street, his residence. And he looked very somber. He seemed quite desperate and to, convince the British public to vote to stay in the EU. And one thing that I found amazing is that he said staying in the EU is good for economic security. I wonder what the Greeks would think, or the Spanish, or the Italians, or the Irish, about economic security these days. If anything, you'd want to be out of the EU and the euro. That's another reason the situation in the UK is not as bad as Greece or Italy or Portugal or Spain, is we still have our own currency, the pound, which has been devalued quite a bit, even against the euro. If you look against the euro, the pound was at 160 before the crisis, and we're now at I think 125. So the pound has actually gone down against the euro, and most people don't realize that. It's already been devalued, and it's actually cushioned the recession. But yeah, I find it funny that he's saying that if we leave Europe, we will lose economic security. Well, maybe so, but what about gaining economic freedom from socialist, sclerotic Europe? And the other point he makes, and it's very personal, and he came out and said, if you're my age, meaning his age, or of older generations, please think of your children and your grandchildren when you vote, and please stay in the EU in order to safeguard the future of your children and great-grandchildren. Well, that's very hypocritical coming from a politician who's doubled the national debt of our country since he's been in power, who's running deficits every year that are, adding up to the national debt, and that's going to have to be paid by future generations. So here's a man, a politician, who is taxing our children and grandchildren right now by spending like a drunken sailor and running up huge debts. Our national debt in the UK is 1.5 trillion. If you don't add not adding the 500 billion that they've guaranteed of bad debts at the bank, we've got more debt per GDP or per capita, than any other country. And here is a man saying that you have to think of your children and grandchildren by voting to stay in Europe. It's just very, you can get the, it doesn't make sense what he's saying, in my opinion. And it will be interesting. Some of the papers are saying that he's desperate. One of his old advisors said the speech was weird. Some are saying that, he broke some protocol rules called PERDA rules, that after May 27th, as a government official, you're not supposed to use government property to campaign for the referendum. I guess he could argue he wasn't inside Downing Street, 10 Downing Street. He was on the street. And the street is not really part of 10 Downing Street. I don't know, but yeah, it's going to be interesting on Thursday, well, after Thursday when the votes are counted, to see if the UK is going to stay in the EU or leave the EU. In my opinion, a vote to leave the EU is a vote for economic freedom, a bit more a bit more economic freedom. I'm not saying that if we leave the EU, we're going to be completely free, because we're not, because we still have big government in this country, but it's away from big government leaving the EU. And it's big government that we have no control over, because all the EU MPs have no power whatsoever. They're just there as puppets. They rubber stamp legislation. They can't block legislation. They can't propose legislation. So it's a totally unelected superstate, the EU. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.